Hello and welcome to Journeys and Journals. I'm Bernie Martin Beck, and I get to talk to the most fascinating people who are our neighbors and friends. Today's guest comes all the way from
Merlin, Oregon.
And you are?
Dick Smith.
Dick, welcome, and thanks for driving in from out in the Colonial. And where do you live?
Merlin, Oregon, and I'm within the Merlin boundaries.
Oh, you are? Well, we're not, so we're really Grants Pass residents, but we're neighbors, friend.
Yes.
What in the world are you doing over in Merlin that makes you so famous that I'm getting out here and wave my flag?
Well, that's a good thing to wave. The flag is to be waved. I'm the chairman of the Josephine County Veterans Walk of Honor, which is located in the Merlin Community Park.
Now, this is akin to the memorial parks throughout the world, right? In the nation.
Well, I would say it is. What we do is we honor those people in Josephine County who would like to honor a veteran.
Now, just a minute. What veterans are we talking about? This guy, Air Force, is World War II.
Well, actually Korea. I was served in Korea and Vietnam.
Ah, this is your hat.
Yes.
Aha.
And that's a relatively new symbol for the Air Force. Only been around about 3 or 4 years.
Well, now, but it's not just for Korean veterans in the park.
No, it means all veterans, to include the merchant Marines who served in war zones. We honor 6 services: the Navy, the Army, the Air Force, the Marines, Coast Guard, and merchant Marines.
Well, my question is, what veterans get their name there?
Any veteran can have their name placed in there as long as they're nominated by a member, a person who lives in Josephine County. In other words, if you have a friend who lives in, say, New England, and you feel very strongly about that, as you live here, you can nominate that friend and put them on the Veterans Walk of Honor.
Well, I have a friend here in Josephine County in Southern Oregon that I'd like to honor on that wall. How do I go about getting old Doug Beck's name on the...
Well, there's a couple of ways. You can go call me directly at my home, and I will send you an application. You can go online to www.merlincommunitypark.org and download an application. Or you can go to a number of places where we have the applications. We have them at all 3 funeral homes in town. We have them at the Chamber of Commerce. We have them at the Sheriff's Station in Merlin. And you can obtain an application to put anyone that you desire on the Veterans Walk of Honor. They do not have to have been deceased. We are honoring living veterans as well as those who have passed.
Oh, I'm sure glad about that, because I got out my pen and pencil here, my pen and checkbook. How much can I write for get an old Doug Beck's name on here?
Well, we asked for a donation of $100 to put Doug's name on there. You can write the check for as much as you want, though. We'd be happy to accept it.
Have people been generous with you?
They have been very generous. Give you a little history of the Veterans Walk. In prior years, we had a small memorial in the park for World War II veterans who died from Josephine County. In about 2003, we got inundated with requests to plant trees in the park for veterans who were dying. And we just didn't have the room. We have a very small park. So in talking to the other board members, we decided to put together a veterans monument of some kind where we could honor veterans by placing their names and so forth on there. On November the 11th, 2004, we made a decision to do this, and on November the 11th, 2005, we dedicated the Veterans Walk of Honor.
Now, who put it together?
There are about 11 people on the board that actually did it. If I start recalling names, I'll probably forget somebody.
But I mean, I saw people with picks and shovels and, you know, actual hard working.
Well, the first little bit of time was planning on what we wanted. We went through about 7 or 8 designs before we came up with the design we have now, which was made by George Mullins, a veteran from World War II. George designed the 9 obelises that stand out there. They stand 8 foot high, 30 inches wide, and they are square. And there's 90 names to a side. He designed it, and then we had to go out and raise money to put it together. And at first, we only were asking $50 to put a name up there.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, we could do it. Right now, it costs us $72 just to put the name up there. So
now, who do I make this check out to?
The Maryland Community Park Vets.
Okay. And how many people have done just as I'm doing and written a check to get a name up there?
As of today, counting yours, 503 names have been put up there. Plus, there are other donors that have come in and helped us out. There are another 126 names up there that were not paid for. And those are the people who have given their lives in defense of this country, going back to World War I.
You mean our neighbors and friends?
Our neighbors and friends who came from Josephine County. There's 126 names, one of them from the Iraq War.
And his name?
Garcia Schill is his last. He has 2 last names, Garcia Schill. And that young man died July of 2007.
Now, war is tough.
War is hell.
I remember, war is what?
Hell.
Yeah, it is. I remember when I was a kid, there'd be those 48-star flag, and some of them would have black ribbon on them. Or there'd be houses with flags, they were like this.
They were blue, and they had either a white or gold star on them.
And what's that mean?
That's the number of people in that home that were in the military, except if they had a gold star. That is the number of people who have died in the military from combat wounds.
So when I hear about a gold star mother, that would tell me...
She lost her son in combat.
Wow. Yeah, that used to be a real, you know, you'd hear about it, but just... Now we've got pictures here, but you're one of those modern guys, and you've brought them on...
on CDs.
You know, it's a little hard for Bernie to shift from the old hard copy picture, which I still do Kodak, you know,
Kodak
film.
film.
I'm not... Doug's handy with the computer and all that stuff, but you've got pictures here, which we'll be showing from time to time.
I brought you photographs of the initial breaking of ground all the way through to the building. I'd like to tell you about some of the people that helped us really do this. We started out with a budget of $40,000 to build this, and thinking that was more than enough.
Sure.
How silly of us. But we had completed the complete building July the 4th, 2007, at a cost of $170,000.
Oh my.
That was donated by people in this county. The people that donated to put the names on the wall, the people who donated to have their names inscribed as benefactors, people in the Walk of Honor who are donors, and of that money, we raised over $80,000 in cash. The rest was done by in-kind. People who came in and used their heavy equipment to move dirt, put in lines for us so we could put in electricity and water and things like that. This was a major program put together by a lot of our neighbors that donated their time and energy.
If I'm driving I-5, I take the turn
At off-ramp 61.
heading for Merlin.
That's correct.
Do I have to do anything besides that? Across the railroad tracks?
And you make, and at Acorn or Sanitarium Road, you make a slight left turn and go up alongside the park, and you can park in the first driveway there and walk down to the Walk of Honor.
But actually, you cross the railroad track and you look, and that's the first thing you see, isn't it?
That's right. 3 flags.
3 flags, and what else?
You see a small sign there. It stands about 5 foot high, engraved in nice green granite that was donated. It says Veterans Walk of Honor. And at night it is lit, as are the flags.
Oh, well, before you leave, I want you to just take this check and see that old Doug served in the Navy in 1950, well, in Korea, let's say that. And you served where?
I served in Korea. I served 22 years in the Air Force. It was funny. I went into the Air Force so I wouldn't have to go to Korea. 3 months later, I was standing in Korea. And I served a year in Korea from about middle of 1953 to 54 during the armistice. It wasn't fighting, but they were still sniping at us. Then I continued to serve for another 22 years, retiring just after the Vietnam War.
So you have seen it.
I've seen enough of it to know that it's something that needs to be done, and I'm happy that I could perform my duty, support the people I was with, and stand up for our country, yes.
Well, now, the Veterans Honor obelisks, do you call them?
There are 9 obelisks, yes.
Let's call them towers.
Okay, towers. There are 9 towers.
And what was the earliest name, and what's the story?
As I said, anyone can recommend someone go on there as long as you live in Josephine County. The earliest one we have on there is a man by the name of Solomon Arnold, who served in the War of Independence in 1780 to 81, I believe he was. He was a private. He was nominated, so serving in the Continental Army, he was placed in there. We have one person from the Civil War, one person from the Mexican-American War, none from the Spanish-American, and then we go into World War I, II, Korea, Vietnam, Bosnia, numbers. We have a number of wars in there. Vietnam, Iraq, Desert Storm.
Well, I just thought of another one. I think I better get out the checkbook again, because my grandfather's father, Gustav Westphal, served in the Civil War. And you know, I didn't even think about that. Old Gustav was out there fighting for the new country that he'd come to.
That's right, and we find that a lot in veterans, that they enter the military to get their citizenship a lot quicker.
And that works?
Oh, it absolutely works. I think they spend 3 years in the military and they qualify for citizenship, as opposed to 5 years and going through all the process that you have to go through.
Well, you brought a bunch of paperwork. Why don't you share, what did you want to talk about?
Well, I want, first of all, the biggest thing I like about this is this monument, and it is a monument, although there's a small memorial on it to honor the 126 people who have died in combat, who lived and enlisted in Josephine County. Having said that, there's another 500 and some odd names on there. There's almost 700 names on this wall. I'm getting ready to add 25 more this month, or in May. We add the names twice a year, once in May and once in October. to upgrade them for Memorial Day and Veterans Day. Last year we added 82 names. This year I'm going to do 25 this year, right now, and we have no idea how many will come in before Veterans Day. It's an ongoing thing. It's a living monument. It has room for 3,600 names.
Oh my.
Before we have to raise another tower.
Tower. You know, I'm pretty proud that there is something that is area-wide remembrance. I think it speaks very well for our community that they stood up and said, we remember. Now, women are certainly a part of that, aren't they?
I would say that they are. My wife and one of my daughters is on there, and her cousin, a female cousin, is on there. They all served in the military. I have 3 son-in-laws on there who all served in the military. My wife's father, who was killed at the Battle of the Bulge, is on there.
Oh my.
Yes.
How old was your wife when her dad died?
See, 37, 44, so about 7 years old.
Just a little kid.
Yes.
And how does she relate to this?
Well, she's very proud of it. I mean, she served in the military herself. The fact is, that's where we met.
Oh, now we get the love story. Okay, tell us all about it.
We were both in service, met in Charleston Air Force Base, South Carolina in 1956. And it became we kind of liked each other.
A whirlwind romance.
Yeah, 2 years of whirlwind romance, and we married in 1958, just after I re-enlisted the first time.
Does that mean that it's number 50 coming up?
No, that means we're working on 51. January the 18th was number 50.
Well, Doug and I get to 50 at the end of the year this year, so I knew that it's the same year,
Yeah.
58. What brought you up to Southern Oregon?
Well, when I was in the military, during the Cuban crisis, I was stationed at Geiger Field Air Force Base in Spokane, Washington. And when we deployed out of there during the Cuban crisis, they sent me to Klamath Falls. And when I got to Klamath Falls, they said, take 10 men and go to Grants Pass. I said, what's at Grants Pass? They said, there's an airport there, set up a camp. We'll tell you when you come back for recovery of aircraft. And so it was actually helicopters and so forth that we were guarding. So I came here, and I was here for about 10 days. My money was not any good in this town. If I was in uniform, I couldn't buy anything. They give it to you. It's just about like it is now. They really support people and the military. So when Nancy and I were looking for a place to retire, she came up to visit a friend, and she called me when I was in LA, and it was a really bad day, and I had a lot of traffic problems. She says, how would you like to live in Oregon? I says, where? She says, Grants Pass. I said, find a house. I came up that weekend, and we bought the house we're in.
Your story is wonderful.
Well,
You just wonder how everybody chose hometown,
yeah.
USA. And then you started giving back to your new community, because I know that on the same committees that you served, your state, your county, old Doug's gone off and served too.
Yes. Doug and I served on a number of committees together. The Merlin Community Park Board is one. The Planning Commission for the county is another that we both served on. Doug is still serving on it. I served 8 years, 5 as chair. I also serve on the Boys and Girls Club Board, have been for the last 11 years.
Well, now, you've just named 3 or 4 groups, and they pay you well?
Oh yeah, I double my pay about every year.
Kind of like Better Life TV and my pay, too.
2 times 0, still 0, yes.
Right. Why do you keep giving back?
Well, I've been very fortunate in my lifetime, and I was able to make a good living and have a good retirement. And if I can retire, and the other thing is I've always been busy, I've always been involved. So this was an easy place to get involved, and people like to volunteer here. When I volunteer, I look for one thing. Am I going to have a result out of that? I'm not looking for busy work. The Merlin Community Park is one thing that we've done. We've really improved on it in the last 10 years, finishing it off the master plan, raising the Veterans Walk of Honor, and those kinds of things. It's a beautiful place. The Boys and Girls Club, I'm really happy about what we've done there. We built a new a new center, 30,000 square feet. We've now extended into Jackson County. We have 5 clubs. We do $1.6 million in budget every year. That's a major deal.
Keep bragging, because you have bragging rights here.
I'm not bragging. It's not me. That's a board that is really an amazing board. There's 22 people on it from 2 communities that really work hard to keep these places open.
Well, you brought up a subject, because that Boys and Girls Club in Grants Pass has a lot of history, and I want to know it all. Because it was a big old Quonset.
3 big old Quonsets.
Okay, now do you know where those Quonsets came from?
Not necessarily. My understanding was that it was built in 1939, and the original building, by the way, is still there. We built around it and added it into the club for the historical portion of that.
So I can come look at it.
Yes, ma'am. I'd be more than happy.
What I remember is after World War II, going there and seeing another one of those Quonsets show up, and it was for the weekend warriors, what you call
the reserves.
Yeah. And that's my memory of.
I don't know how about. I do know that the Boys and Girls Club have started here. We were been in business in Josephine County or in Grants Pass for 37 years. We moved there in about 1980 or 81.
Okay, well, and folks, if you have history of that Quonset huts before 81, just let Better Life TV know, because as I recall, Benny Spalding put up one of those Quonset huts, which had nickel sticks in it, and some of them floated down in the flood because it was too near the river on 6th Street. One of them's out on Miracle Mile, which is that Quonset's, I understand. Then the roller rink came from Camp Adair when they started tearing that down. And I want to know where all these houses came from. One lady called and said, you know, we have one of those houses. They tear the boards down and come and build something. And I'd like to know where every piece of that fine lumber that they built Camp White out of ended up.
Well, I can't say because I wasn't here during that period of time.
No, but you bump into a lot of vets. So
I do. That's the nice thing about this too. I'd like to give you a commercial here too, before we get this over with. But on Memorial Day, the Young Marines will have the first memorial ceremony out at the Veterans Walk to honor those veterans who have passed over the last year. And they're going to do that somewhere around 11 o'clock in the morning if you wish to come out and hear the reading of the roll. And we will be having the Veterans Walk, the Veterans celebration on November the 11th, which starts at 11 a.m. also. And Keith Heck, not a retired U.S. Marine, but a U.S. Marine, I can't say ex, either former U.S. Marine, from the will be making our keynote speech. So we are active out there. We do represent the veterans, and we'd like to see them, the community represent all of them also.
Well, I'm so glad you brought your jacket, fancy jacket here. And this is what it looks like.
That is our logo. That is a copyrighted logo, by the way. And we have done such a nice job that there's the Klamath Falls people came over to look at ours before they built theirs and used some of our contractors. And the people over in Central Point who are building the other Veterans Monument for those who have died in action came over and looked at it to see how we put ours together also.
Well, now, what are these pins that you've brought along?
This is the 60th anniversary of the United States Air Force. That pin is for them, and this is my Rotary pin.
Oh, you're a Rotarian.
Yes, I am.
A lot of good has come from that organization.
Yes, it has.
So we've got the 48-star flag over here and the
50 star.
I don't have a 49. At the time, I knew they made 49 stars flags, but I wasn't into history so much. Now I wished I'd have had it. You got one story last minute to tell us about what it means to be a veteran of American.
Well, when I was going in, you were either enlisted or you were drafted. And I enlisted, and I did so to get into the Air Force rather than go in the Army. It was one of the best decisions I've ever made. I stayed with the military for 40 years, both military and civilian. I retired in 1994 out of Los Angeles and hurried to Grants Pass.
Oh, Southern Oregon, it has this draw. There's something about the hollow of God's hand. It starts over in Ashland, this beautiful valley. And of course, if you go the other way, there's lovely valleys in Northern California. Welcome. I'm glad you chose to come to this part and to honor our veterans. It's a fantastic thing you're doing.
Thank you.
And I want to say thank you to all the veterans and come out to those ceremonies in Merland or Klamath. Watch that grow. Huh?
Yes, watch Klamath.
Central Point.
Yes.
Thank you, folks, for tuning in. And this is your chance to wave the flag and thank a veteran. When the guy's walking by with a hat like this, you can pretty well know that he served his country, and that's why we're free. I'm Bernie Martin Beck saying bye for now.